The following program is a sports handicapping show. That's right, we will be discussing sports betting and all kinds of other gambling stuff, including game predictions. As you know, not every bet will win, but we do our best. Feel free to use this information at your own risk, and remember, wager wisely, folks.
Broadcasting from the Vegas Video Network studios, live from the Las Vegas Strip, Covers.com presents Vegas SportsDay. And now from the sports betting capital of the world, here are your hosts, Teddy and the Professor.
It's Wednesday in beautiful, sunny Sin City, and you are watching Vegas SportsDay, the pulse of the sports betting world. I'm your host, Teddy Covers, joined as always by my esteemed colleague, the Professor, Dave Malinsky.
Coming up today, how do you get back up when you feel like a horse that's been spurred too hard? Can you really picture Kobe Bryant with a guitar singing Me and Paul? You can look that one up, Willie Nelson on YouTube. Timeless song. You'll enjoy it. And as we get closer to conference tournament and NCAA tournament time on the college hardwoods, it's not the full court press that we talk about today, but the full court pressure.
So, Dave, first take, I know you're going to be verbose in this one. Something you got to say. What did you see last night that you want to share with our viewing audience?
Pops, couldn't you have at least told us? And you?
Yeah, that's a great first take, and certainly a valid first take. We'll break down exactly what happened with San Antonio, Portland in just a minute, but I want to talk about good teams in the second half of ball games in college basketball right now, because, boy, we saw some really good halftime betting opportunities last night with quality teams that came out flat early. You know what? Florida, 36-17 at the break over Auburn. They were laying 11 at halftime. You laid it. You never sweated that bet. North Carolina beating up on NC State in the second half after a kind of a sluggish first half. They won and covered. Virginia, yeah, they missed not one, not two, but all three 1-and-1s. The front end of all three 1-and-1s in the last 30 seconds of that ball game made the final score look real close. Virginia second half, they were laying three, got the job done against Virginia Tech despite the 6 points they left off the scoreboard at the end of that ball game. And of course, Kentucky taking care of business in the second half against Mississippi State, 45-23 after the break. It's a good time of year to be looking at good teams off of sluggish first half. We don't get to do a lot with halftime betting on this show, but these are opportunities you certainly want to be aware of, look for in the coming days ahead.
Are you going to do halftimes on the show during the tournaments? They'll be going live.
I'd love to. That'd be a lot of fun.
See if the janitor will actually sit in the room so we don't have to go out and bet with him. He can just come right in.
That'd be good stuff.
Let's do that.
We'll give him action. But, yeah, most surely, when March Madness goes and we're live on air, we'll absolutely be talking about the games as they are happening, if there are any halftime opportunities present themselves. But for today, for right now at least, in a Market Watch segment, we have to do this. Talk about Greg Popovich. And, yeah, he did it to us last night. Not the first time this year that he's turned a game into a throwaway, but no Tony Parker, no Tim Duncan. Both guys announced out in the last, about 2 hours, 3 hours before tip-off. The markets reacted very quickly, and then Popovich came across the sports option screen. Guess what? San Antonio is going to be without their two star players tonight. And, of course, that's already being on top of being without Manu Ginobili and Tiago Splitter and T.J. Ford already missing. So, they waved the white flag early in that ball game. The Blazers scored 41 in the first, and basically Popovich let it go. All right, you guys won 11 in a row. Good job. Thank you. You can take tonight off. It was a little bit hard for us to anticipate, obviously, being that we liked San Antonio plus the points yesterday. The Spurs had been on that 11-0 run. They have today off, and they're challenging Oklahoma City for the number one seed in the Western Conference right now. Well, we can't get our money back. No, I lost it. You lost it. You out there, anyone who followed us lost it yesterday. But we can sort through the details to make sense of this moving forward.
We'll start at one of the base points. We had talked on the show yesterday about San Antonio being in position to get that first seed in the Western Conference. Does it matter to Popovich? Apparently not. He did feel the need to disclose a few things yesterday because he's taken some heat from the league in the past when he's taken games off like this. Part of it is the competitive balance aspect. It's okay for your team to take a loss. You're not supposed to be allowed to give another team a win. If Portland makes the playoffs by one game over someone else, it could have been that one game. And there's also been an issue in the past with ticket sales. You live in Portland. Your kid's a Tim Duncan fan. Here's the one time this year Duncan's going to play up there. You buy the ticket, you take your kid. Oh, there's Duncan. He's the one over there in street clothes. So there's been this awkwardness that he's had to deal with. Here's the way Popovich explains it. Let's take a look at his quote. He said, "We've had the same goal for 15 years, to be the best team we can possibly be come playoff time. We've never, ever talked about what our record should be. Never. It's never come up in any practice or game for 15 years. That's his way of saying, okay, league, we're the Spurs. We want to be the best we can be later. Now, maybe we'll be a third seed instead of a 2, a fourth seed instead of a 3. We don't worry about the seeding. We want to peak at the right time. But now here's what you've got to react to. First thing that happens, the information comes across. Those 4s, they start to rise as high as 8 or 8.5 at tip-off. So the first thing we have to deal with, when can you get off? If you get it immediately, of course, you can lay the 4 and get out of the game. Almost no one's in position to do that. But now it's the awkward thing. Okay, you've taken a 4. Can you lay back a 5? Running that risk, if it falls on either number, you lose a bet. And God forbid if it goes 5.5 or 6, you run the risk of middling yourself. Teddy, when you're in that position, how do you usually handle it?
The answer is it depends. Sometimes you suck it up. Last night, I was, I found San Antonio plus 4.5. I was all happy. I got in a money line bet at what I thought was a good number at the time. And then obviously the information comes out. Boom, it's 7.5 in 5 minutes. And what did I do with that 4.5? Nothing. I held on to it. I took my loss, and that's going to be that. There are times, especially when you're seeing it happening on the screen in front of you, there are times where I will do. I'm not looking to offend anyone, but we call it a Polish middle, where you can lose both sides. The most you can win is 1. But there are times where I'm willing to take the worst of it just to get off a bet. But not last night. I didn't do that. I was hoping that maybe the reserves would come in and play, and obviously that wasn't the case. But, we're talking about a game where Portland scored 137 points on 59% shooting. That's something that's going to hurt the databases moving forward. When you look at the Blazers, no, they're not that good on offense. You look at San Antonio's defensive numbers. You can look at those last 5 game stats and all of that, and boy, those numbers need to be taken with a fair bit of salt, a nice grain of salt, Dave. But how do you handle those situations when you're sitting with a bad bet as you're approaching tip-off?
Yeah, part of this is you want to treat it as 2 separate entities because you think in your mind, does Portland -6 make sense under these circumstances? Because Popovich is basically saying 2 things at the same time. I want to rest Parker and Duncan, and I don't care about the result of this game. And maybe it's that second statement. I don't care. Says, well, Portland -6 with all the guys that are out, not thinking about the original +4. You sort of write that off and think, does Portland -6 make sense? Yeah, if it falls 5, you lose both. But if the Portland -6 or 6.5 makes sense at that moment, you still do it. So you don't think about getting out of your other bet. That bet's already been made. You think about, does this bet make sense as the marketplace evolves? We didn't do anything with it because it just started jumping so quickly that we weren't able to get our arms fully around the situation. The other thing, too, is there's always this idea, do you trust the markets to be absolutely right? In this day and age, we've seen a lot of mistakes this year. Line services, sending out bad lineups, guys jumping on information to make bets that isn't necessarily accurate. So we want to make sure that it's real. The other thing, too, I said he was saying, get it out of your database. San Antonio's defense fell 7 spots in that one game. That's how extreme it was. There's no real value in there to measure the Portland offense, the San Antonio defense. That game tells you nothing about Popovich as a road underdog. It tells you nothing about the Trailblazers as a home favorite. The game actually has no value at all in your database going forward. So if you want to keep good records, and again, we know a lot of you hesitate to do it. A lot of people keep full records because you could square it up with the official NBA stats. The minute you start deleting something, you can make a mistake and you don't know how to square it back up. That is an issue, but an even worse issue is keeping it in your database because it just doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, certainly an interesting game to consider and discuss. Unfortunately, a very are we going to have a worse loss than that this year, Dave? We're going to have a game that loses by 36 ATS as a play of the day on the show.
Not in baseball.
Exactly. Hopefully, we won't have many.
Summers are better that way.
And if we do have a game that loses by 36 in baseball, it's one hell of a game. That's the wrong side. Bottom line, hey, see if we can make it back tonight. But interesting game to discuss after the fact, and that's why we've done it, obviously, right here. And we like to discuss all kinds of things in this first segment, including some of the viewer emails we've been getting. That email address, of course, sportsday@covers.com. And you can send in questions, discussion points, whatever you want us to talk about on air. That's the place to do it, sportsday@covers.com. Of course, follow us on Twitter @VegasSportsDay and get involved in the community. Active threads and discussions going right now, covers.com/posting forum.
When we come back, Kobe just likes his buddy Paul. That's all. He's a misunderstood guy. We're going to tell you what that means. You're watching Vegas Sports Day.
Are you looking for the latest odds, the fastest scores, the most important trends, and the best matchups and stats? Are you looking for the key late-breaking information that can make you a winner? Well, Covers.com has the answer. The world's largest sports betting community gives you a front-row seat in the heart of the action, from the opening lines to the final scores. If you want to stay ahead of the game, Covers covers the numbers.
Hey, I'm Al, man. Is that how you get them to do that all the time? Just sit there and be an ass. Is that it? Hey, I'm Al. Hey, I'm Al Mancini at Top of the Food Chain. You are watching the Vegas Video Network. We got big forks, big spoons. I got a big mouth. I got no guests.
Okay, guys, let's scrub up. Time to go into the post-mortem, where we take you deep inside the game to show you things you should have seen, but probably didn't.
You know, there's been a lot of media coverage coming from Kobe Bryant and the LA Lakers this week, which is not unusual. You know, it's a big-time player, and a big-time market brings that type of scrutiny. But this was a little bit different. This was one of the best competitors in the history of the sport taking his own management to task. One of the best competitors standing behind a championship-winning teammate. It all stems from the continued trade rumors concerning Pau Gasol, with the Lakers again trying to come up with a point guard after their earlier attempt to land Chris Paul failed, thanks to David Stern. And naturally, it's Gasol's name that comes up in these trade discussions because, frankly, LA doesn't have a lot of tradable commodities. You look at some of these guys. No one wants Meta World Peace. Matt Barnes, Derek Fisher, Steve Blake, Troy Murphy. These are not highly tradable commodities. They're not coveted commodities. And, you know, when you look at the Lakers, that's, other than the big three of Bynum, Gasol, and Kobe, that's who they got. So, as the key players in that rotation. So, you know, this is how Kobe got things started with this discussion. Quote, "I wish management would come out and either trade him or not trade him. It's just tough for a player to give his all when you don't know if you're going to be here tomorrow. If they're not going to do it, come out and say you're not going to do it." It's the aftermath of that quote that's proven to be rather interesting, and there's plenty of food for thought as we evaluate a team that heads into the All-Star break with key games against the Mavericks and the Thunder over the next two nights.
It's amazing how much is played out in the media these days, and it's going to go to our next postmortem topic as well. But Mitch Kupchak felt the need to respond to that. And maybe this is a little sign, too, that the Phil Jackson era isn't here anymore, and things that would be taken care of privately now go public. Okay, you saw what Bryant said. Now let's take a look at Kupchak's response to that. And again, the fact that he felt compelled to do this means something. As a former player, I understand how the days leading up to the trade deadline can be nerve-wracking for an NBA player. I have a responsibility to ownership, our fans, and the players to improve the team for this season and seasons to come. That's relatively benign, but nothing in LA is benign when you're speaking back at Kobe Bryant. So what does the media do next? They got to go right back to Kobe. They go back and say, "Kobe, did you see what Kupchak said?" His first thought was, "I've said all I have to say. No comment." But then later, Kobe does have a comment that they went out there for him to run with. He, referring to Paul Gasol, needs to know that we all support him in the locker room and we've all got his back. Is this just a bunch of smoke being blown out there? Is this somebody saying what they need to say? No, because we saw something on the court that tells us maybe there's a little different dynamic in play. The best basketball played in the NBA this year, maybe the NBA in our lifetimes, was a 37-4 run from the Lakers right off the get-go against Portland on Tuesday. That's not 37-4 against the Wizards or against the Bobcats or the Hornets. It's against Portland, a good team that will likely end up being in the playoffs. That was fantastic basketball. Lakers did have a closed-door meeting, players only, for a team that was missing a little bit of spark somewhere. Because one of the things that Phil Jackson did that he was masterful with was motivating these guys. That's not really Mike Brown. Mike Brown's a technical coach. These guys had a lot of games where motivation was lacking. We finally saw Tuesday night, they came out with a chip on their shoulder. They put the pedal to the metal, to use that particular phrase. They stood behind their words. So yeah, when they go to Dallas tonight, under the microscope, we might have seen that being that little slap that this team needs. And maybe the motivation won't come from Brown. Maybe they need to find a way to motivate themselves. As big a story here is not so much Kupchak and Bryant, but the role that the media plays in the basketball these days, especially the modern media. If you're at UNLV, you're supposed to be pretty happy right now. You're sitting at 22-6. Mike Mosier, potential Mountain West Conference Player of the Year candidate. It should be all good. You beat North Carolina. You've got wins over San Diego State and New Mexico. You might even get a chance to be a top 16 seed in the tournament. But what's happening now? Last 7 games, 4-3 straight up, 1-6 against the spread. 2 of the 4 wins came in overtime. 1 of the other 2 came in the last second against San Diego State. Team is not playing that well. Why is that happening? Maybe it's something we have to explore more in this modern Twittersphere world that we're in. Different pressures involved because the media has so much access to the players. And now we're finding, especially for the college players, they're at the very forefront of that Twitter age and those forms of communication. Maybe we need to tune in to what they're tuned into.
Yeah, I mean, at 22-6, you're supposed to be riding high. But what happens when you open the local paper this morning, the Las Vegas Review-Journal? We find this from Anthony Marshall. Quote, "I feel like I owe the fans and the Las Vegas community an apology. They spend a lot of money to watch us play, and we have the best fans in the world. When we go out and display a lackluster performance, I feel like I owe them an apology." This at 22-6.
They're already over. They're over-under for season wins, aren't they? Yeah, and he's apologizing.
I seem to remember them beating North Carolina, Illinois, as you mentioned, in conference play, New Mexico and San Diego State. Rebels have a pretty good resume, but, perhaps Marshall feels it more than others because he is a local kid from right here in Las Vegas. He went to Mojave High School. And maybe more important, this next quote shows a little bit about the changing face of modern communications. This is one more from Anthony Marshall. Quote, "The ones who are on Twitter are hearing it. I get it all the time. I'm getting crazy tweets and all that type of stuff. I go on different message boards. I just like to read what people have to say." The fact that a player has taken it to heart so much that he felt the need to apologize was not lost on first-year head coach Dave Rice. Rice's quote, "I think Anthony apologizing to fans, I believe it explains to a degree why we haven't played as well of late. It's not an excuse, but I do believe that our guys have felt somewhat overwhelmed with the pressure of expectations of the town." We've always used these pressure aspects as a part of our handicapping approach, and really, it comes into play the most down the stretch of a long season, as teams face these must-win games to get in whatever tournament, postseason tournament they're hoping to play in. But remember, this type of pressure can cut both ways. In the world of modern communications, perhaps that is even more significant. UNLV tonight, 13.5-point chalk at home in what should be a bounce-back spot against Boise State.
Okay, time to go to the board now. When we come back, we're going to start in the NBA as money time begins.
Oh, hello there. My name is Brandon GOOCH HAHN, host of Awkward Silence 2.1. And when I'm not living vicariously through Chris Phillips, I'm on VegasVideoNetwork.com.
Livestream is your premier place to watch live events on the web, mobile devices, and connected TVs. See new events daily or broadcast your own at livestream.com. Livestream. Be there.
It's time to raise the roof. We got to get going here, Dave. It is money time. This edition of Money Time is brought to you by Covers.com. Remember, for all the key information you need in every sport, Covers covers the numbers. Let's start tonight at Madison Square Garden in New York City. Ooh, NBA, yeah. Madison Square Garden in New York City, where the Knicks are 6.5-point home favorites tonight against the Atlanta Hawks. And, I mean, the Knicks have been a major story, obviously. Kara was asking me about Jeremy Lin last night. Who is this guy? And when Kara hears of an NBA player, you know how the Knicks, they've gone mainstream. They're in the national media right now. And, of course, major drama story, but they don't really have a lot of time on the practice floor together. They're trying to weave Carmelo Anthony, J.R. Smith, and Baron Davis into the rotation right now. 3 of the top 7 in this current rotation weren't even with the team a month ago. There's plenty of upside for the Knicks, no question about it, but major expectations to deal with in a very tough media market. But maybe the Knicks not the only team with issues tonight, Dave.
You might think it would be dull to just watch someone do push-ups. It's not. It's going to be a little fun after the show today. Finally, it's the Crew's turn for a change. Yeah, Atlanta brings issues into the Garden. We don't expect to see Joe Johnson again until after the All-Star break. Now, you'll look at the stats. Leading scorer, big timer, all-star player. It's got to hurt them. Does it or doesn't it? 3 of the last 4 games, Atlanta doesn't reach 80. One of the problems with Johnson, he scores a lot, but a lot of times the ball stops with him, not an assist guy. The team was having a lot of chemistry problems with Johnson, and the interesting thing, Johnson himself, the day he was injured at Chicago, pointed out these very chemistry notions after the game. Now, he's saying this before he knows that he's going to be out. So how does Johnson view what's happening there? Let's take a look. We know the right thing to do. A lot of times, we don't come out and do it. We should all have one agenda, and that is winning the basketball game. Not who scores what, who does what. We are too self-conscious about who is scoring and the little things that really don't matter. Well, Joe, that's you, pal. You've been the guy doing that so many times with this team through the years. So do we see Atlanta minus that good score out there tonight? Or might we actually see the Hawks out there with a little bit better chemistry? Kind of muddles the picture a little bit. Who's likely to step up? Tracy McGrady. The same McGrady who a week ago was complaining about not getting enough playing time. Is he in shape to be able to go out there and contribute more than about 25 minutes? We're not sure. Can he defend at an up-tempo game that the Knicks would like to play at? We're not sure. There are a couple of other issues, though, that are going to come into play. And one of the most interesting might be the Knicks finally had some practice yesterday. There was an added element at that practice that could be significant.
Oh, no question about it. But first I got to make fun of McGrady for a minute. Gee, Tracy McGrady joins a team and their chemistry gets worse?
Yeah.
What a surprise. Oh, my goodness. I can't believe that happened in Atlanta. That's only happened in every other spot that he's been throughout the course of his career. We'll see how T-Mac steps up tonight. But, yeah, interesting factor for the Knicks when it comes to maybe a little bit of a coaching edge in this one. Mike Woodson, of course, was the coach, the head coach for the Atlanta Hawks for, about 5 or 6 years at least, maybe 7 years before finally being let go prior to last season. Woodson, he's Mike D'Antoni's top assistant right now, someone who could very well find some creative ways, in theory, to defend this anemic Atlanta attack if the Knicks are putting much effort on the defensive end of the basketball court tonight.
Let's go to the NBA nightcap at the Staples Center. The host Clippers now a 9-point favorite over Denver. Obviously some injuries involved when the price being that high. Teddy will break some of those down for you. But can the Clippers be 9 even against a depleted team? Yeah, this is the last game before the All-Star break. In theory, this is the let it all hang out game, for a big favorite. But look at these numbers now. The Clippers, heading to the break, are now number 23 in the NBA on our best defensive charts. There's no one else lower than number 18 that still has a winning record. You don't get a lot of easy wins when you're not playing good defense. Without Chauncey Billups, just 4-4 straight up. Randy Foye has had a few moments at the number 2 spot, not enough of them. This is a team that we loved in close games. Chris Paul takes over, but we don't love when they're favored by this much because they don't have that defensive intensity. They don't have that depth to be building margins. Question is, over the course of the day, can we trust Denver?
Yeah, and that's a big issue because if you put your money on Denver right now, you don't want a situation like we had with San Antonio last night where multiple key guys are missing. This is what we know. Again, this is as of 11 a.m. Pacific time on Wednesday morning. This is what we know from Denver. Delano Gallinari, he's out. He's been out for weeks. Nothing new or different there. That's the only guy we know is out. Now, Nene is being listed as out by several sources, but he did travel with the team to L.A., and there's a chance we could see him at some point this evening. Ty Lawson, who the betting markets expect to be out, that's what drove this line move from 6.5 to 9 this morning, based on the Lawson injury. He traveled with the team to L.A. Don't know if he's going to be able to get in the lineup, but he is expected to at least try, and he's going to take part in the shoot-around prior to tip-off this evening. His backup's Andre Miller, but the other guy that they use at the point, Rudy Fernandez, also has a back injury. He may not be able to go. But when it comes to Nene, Lawson, and Rudy Fernandez, no guarantees that any or all of the three will play, but no guarantees that any or all of the three are out. These are all something we have to consider right now as game time decisions. So who's going to play? Huh? Who knows? Carl has an open rotation up front, which means not only a tough time with the previews, it also gives us some tough times when we're doing post-mortem and reviewing the games after they've happened. Here's a quote from Coach Carl. Right now, every big guy on our team has an opportunity to play. Every once in a while, someone's going to get left out in the cold. I ride with the guy who has the energy and gets into the game. Denver's been scrappy lately, Dave, haven't they? Most assuredly. They lost by 1 at Memphis. They lost in overtime at Oklahoma City, and then won at overtime versus Minnesota in their last 3 ball games. This despite all of those injuries. This team hosts San Antonio tomorrow. So Carl, in theory, may give in early if this one gets away. So does Denver save it up for tomorrow's game instead of today's? We'll find out tonight.
Coming up next, historically they've called a guy shooting poorly in college basketball as someone who's firing up bricks. For West Virginia, they're now calling them trucks. We'll explain what that means as Money Time continues.
Traditional media believes that after about 3 minutes, you'll tune out. Most Vegas media companies think if it doesn't jiggle, you won't tune in. At the Vegas Video Network, we think both are wrong. The Vegas Video Network is the first and only live online broadcast network that specializes in insider news and expert views about Vegas. We combine great storytelling with the ability to watch when and where you want on your computer, mobile device, or television. Discover the real Las Vegas. Visit VegasVideoNetwork.com.
Let's go to South Bend, Indiana tonight, where the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, about a 2.5-point home favorite over West Virginia. We did see a little bit of Mountaineers money come in this money, driving this line down from the opener of 3. And we did a postmortem earlier in the week talking about this Notre Dame turnaround, a team that didn't look particularly impressive in non-conference play, came into the Big East season, and you're like, they were kind of an afterthought. Their leading scorers out for the year, and all they've done, boom. 8-0 straight up, 7-1 against the spread in their last 8 ball games. Still, this point spread shows you, not a team getting a ton of betting market respect. West Virginia, during this span, 3-5 straight up. Notre Dame 8-0, West Virginia 3-5 straight up. Notre Dame 7-1 against the spread during this span. West Virginia 2-6 against the spread. And 2 of their 3 straight-up wins came in overtime. So it's really not like the Mountaineers have been taking care of business against most teams during this particular run. Fighting Irish won 55-51. They were 7-point underdogs in Morgantown exactly 2 weeks ago. They were up 26-16 at the half, really shut down West Virginia, and then held on for the victory. But you brought up bricks versus trucks. Well, Truck Bryant 0 for 6 for the Mountaineers in that ballgame, and that's the beginning of a slide for him that could be the key to tonight's outcome.
I mean, a lot of you know where we want to go with this. Notre Dame slows the game down and bothers a lot of teams. Doesn't bother West Virginia. They don't mind a slow tempo. They're physical. Bob Huggins with revenge. Yeah, we like to look at that. Guy like Truck Bryant, a veteran senior guard on the road. We sort of like that to handle the crowd. But how much can we get out of Bryant? Teddy mentioned that first game against Notre Dame. That was the start of a 3-game slide that's been so bad, we need to take a look at it. There's something that could be significant here in terms of the way it plays out tonight. So let's go to Truck Bryant's last 3 games. How about 7 for 34 from the field, only 9.3 points per game? How is he doing up to that point? 37.8% shooting. Not that awful considering how many 3-pointers he has to take. 18.4 points a game. Last 3 games, his scoring has fallen in half. What was the key to that night at Notre Dame? The game immediately before that, he had played every minute of an overtime win at Providence, the full 45. That's tough when you're this late into November. And in Big East games, he's been averaging, or this late in February, he's been averaging 38 minutes a game in the Big East. Is it possible that that was the game that just gassed him out and he hasn't had his legs since then? Maybe it is. But here's a little reason for optimism. West Virginia has been off since last Thursday when they won at Pittsburgh. That's a nice little break to get almost a full week in conference play, especially to prepare for a team that has the tactics that Notre Dame has. Maybe Bryant breaks that slump tonight. At least people betting West Virginia this morning believe that.
Yeah, a week off in late February is not going to hurt Truck Bryant at this stage of the season. But, you know, we look at West Virginia and the pace elements of this ballgame. And, you know, you look at the total where the betting markets expect this game to be played at a snail's pace. So not only does West Virginia have the extra time, they're also not going to be pushed in terms of tempo on the floor tonight. They're playing at the pace that they prefer, which is another element in their favor. And let's not forget that Jay Wright quote we brought up in the post-mortem about Notre Dame earlier this week, where he talked about the Fighting Irish margin for success being very thin. Notre Dame's played well, but they may be up against it a little bit tonight.
Let's go to Atlanta, place you're probably not be expecting. Old Dominion taking on Georgia State. Georgia State, a 4-point favorite and actually a key Colonial Athletic Association showdown. 12-4 for Old Dominion coming in, 10-6 for Georgia State, trying to get into that number 4 slot in the conference standings and the first round bye for the tournament. Why do we bring it up? It fits in other things we're talking about on today's show. That idea of pressure in college basketball. We see so many times there's a market tendency to want to bet on teams that need to win games, bet on a team in a big game, under the assumption that pressure helps. But not when you're 18 or 19 or 20 years old, and you're not dealing with that pressure very often. We bring it up because this is a unique role for Georgia State. The seniors on this team, they've never had a winning year. They've never won more than 11 games in any year. And it means if you've never had a winning season, you haven't had any big games in February. Now, this is the first time around for them. Old Dominion, it's a little different story. They've got 4 of the top 6 players in the rotation are seniors. Look at what these kids have been through. 3 years back, they won the CIT tournament. Then the last 2 years, they've been in the big dance. Think about a kid like Kent Basemore, a senior who's played 169 postseason tournament minutes in his career. So yeah, we believe this is a very big factor. Here's a team that has not faced pressure. Here's a team that has faced a lot of pressure. The team that's faced the pressure is going to be calm. If you're Old Dominion and you're used to playing these big games, playing Georgia State on the road isn't that difficult of a challenge. In non-conference play, they played Kentucky, they played Missouri. They're used to doing these step-ups. Now, some other elements come into play. We see this as being a big factor. We see the experience as being a big factor. But as we've said time and time again, the market is dominated by generic, full season power ratings. Those power ratings might not be painting the proper portrait tonight.
Yeah, I mean, you brought up the handicapping issue for Old Dominion versus Georgia State tonight. What about the line value equation here? You know, there have been 12 meetings between these two teams since Georgia State joined the Colonial Athletic Conference. And you look at the numbers here. Let's show this graphic. Old Dominion, 11-1 straight up in those ball games, winning by 178 points. The only Georgia State win during this span, 55-54. That came back in January 2009. And the shortest line in any of those 12 meetings, including the ones in Georgia, was Old Dominion -5. Now Georgia State's laying 4, a very different point spread value equation than the ones we've been talking about in recent years.
So what do we do with one like this? We think the markets have gone too far. And again, these are where the mistakes are made in college basketball. When they look at the power ratings more than the specifics of a given matchup. Has this series really changed 9 full points from the closest point spread over the last 6 years? We don't believe so. Has a team that's only gone 1-11 straight up against its opponent and they only win by 1 point, they're suddenly 50-50 to win by 4 or more? No, it doesn't work that way. Let's give us Old Dominion plus the 4 as the play of the day in a tense, low-scoring game. Now, a lot of tempo here, so the 4 is even bigger. We've got an underdog that will not only play with poise under pressure, but maybe relish that pressure a little bit. And don't be surprised if the favored home team freezes up. This is the first time these kids have ever had this kind of pressure game.
Let's not forget that Georgia State, not the best at closing out games at the free throw line, hitting just 65% from the charity stripe for the season. One more opportunity for Old Dominion to come in under that number. And, yeah, maybe might be an opportunity to put a little money line in your pocket as well. That's going to wrap it up for the Wednesday edition. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day to spend with us. For Malinsky, I'm Sevransky. Enjoy the games and good luck. We'll see you again tomorrow.